Good evening and welcome to Rose City Politics. It is April the 28th. Our regular panel tonight includes Doug, recently vaccinated Sartori. How are you doing, Doug?
Feeling no ill effects except for some reason I'm filled with this overwhelming feeling that one world government is an idea whose time has come.
Oh, that fits with some of your other political beliefs, left-leaning panelists that we have here. So glad that you're here. Loving the outfit. You've got a red hue on the face. You got you got the collar sort of unbuttoned there. You're looking good, Doug.
I'm
Post-vaccinated Doug.
This is cabana wear for sure, and I haven't been able to take a vacation in a very long time, just like most of us. So I'm just sort of feeling it today.
Well, glad you're feeling it. We also have Don Merrifield Jr. Don, are you feeling it today?
I'm feeling something, but I don't want to get into that.
Keep those hands where we can see them, Donald.
Glad to have you here. We also have Pat Papadayas. How are you doing, Pat?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. Glad to be on.
Glad that we've got the full panel. It's always fun when we get this opportunity. We've also got a guest tonight that's going to be on the show. We're going to be talking with Windsor Police Service Board member and Ward 3 Windsor City Councillor Rino Bortolin. So be sure that you stick around to hear this entire episode. It's going to be great. If you're a Patreon subscriber, thank you so much. If not, head to patreon.com/Rose City Politics. We appear monthly in BizX Magazine and whenever you want at bizxmagazine.com. We're available on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, please. And Rose City Politics broadcasts live on tape each week and is brought to you with the kind support of LIUNA 625, Building Better Communities. So big show tonight. As I said, we're going to be bringing on Rino Bortolin, and we're going to be talking about the Windsor police budget. It's more transparent than it's ever been before, thanks to a push by the Ward 3 councillor and the member of the police service board. That'll be a really great one to get to. And we're going to be talking tonight about Mayor Dilkens is in quarantine again. So, without further ado, thanks for listening to Rose City Politics. We're going to get right to the topics. CTV Windsor's Rich Garton put this one out. Windsor Mayor in quarantine after cross-border medical appointment. This came out on the 26th of April. Mayor Dilkens crossed into Michigan last weekend with a family member for a medical appointment. He was with his son on this trip over, and his son was vaccinated while on the way for this medical trip. And the Mayor Dilkens, was offered a vaccination. He refused it, saying to CTV that he wanted to wait for his age group in Windsor. The mayor is over the age of 40, and there has been an eligibility for people over 40 to receive the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine at pharmacies since April 20th. While the mayor was in Michigan, he was there for what he says was 24 hours waiting for a negative COVID test to cross back over. He visited his brother's home and picked up $1,700 in goods purchased online during the pandemic for what he said, he said it was purchased by his son. Now, Mayor Dilkens says that on the trip, he didn't go shopping or enter any other non-medical facility whatsoever. The mayor also said that when he crossed back into Canada, he did it in Sarnia via the Blue Water Bridge because of the proximity of that bridge from his brother's family home. He says he declared the goods and paid the tax. Now, listen, I don't think that anyone here on this show really wants to have a discussion about the medical appointment or who it was for. I mean, listen, medical is medical, and I don't think that that necessarily comes into play here. What we did ask, though, via our Rose City Politics Twitter page, listen to me, I sound like I'm old now. On our Twitter, we asked, why didn't Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens take the first vaccine that was available to him? So again, we're going to run through this all just quickly and we'll get to this discussion. Mayor Dilkens said he was offered vaccine in Michigan, but refused to take it. He said to CTV on April 26th, "I've never been vaccinated for COVID-19. I will wait until my age group is called in the city of Windsor." Now, as I said, the AstraZeneca vaccine has been available at Windsor Essex pharmacies for those over 40 since April 20th. So there's a bit of a disparity here. The mayor tweeted on April the 20th about the 40 plus vaccination program at our local pharmacies. So the question raised is, why did the mayor say on the 26th that his age group wasn't eligible? This raises some concerns. If someone who was over the age of 40 read this in the media, they see that someone apparently over the age of 40 isn't eligible for the vaccine, they might not look into it anymore until they see that there is the entry date for someone over 40. So this bit of a misinformation or, this confusion, it definitely raises some problems. It's further complicated because the city of Windsor and the Windsor Essex County Health Unit, along with some other local organizations, created the WeVax portal. Now, this assists residents in finding out accurate information about when they are eligible for their vaccine based on their age, based on their postal code. It's also available in 11 different languages. Now, the mayor has stressed on numerous occasions via social media and through traditional media locally and internationally. He was quoted in the Washington Post as to the need for more vaccines. And he's tweeted saying, "If you can, please get your syringe and help reduce the spread." I believe the word syringe was the emoji for syringe there. It was a tweet. So the question raises, why didn't the mayor take the first vaccine that was available and offered to him? He was in Michigan. They offered it to him. I don't think that anybody would have necessarily had a problem with him receiving a vaccine while he was over there. That's where I want to start off on this. I mean, he's offered it, take it. The United States, quite frankly, has a big oversupply of vaccine. There's a lot of politics that we could go into in regards to vaccine hoarding, but that's another conversation for another time. But the mayor was offered a vaccine and quite frankly could have helped reduce the burden on our local vaccine supply that we have here by taking one of those. So that's an interesting point that I just wanted to bring up right off the bat. But we'll bring in someone here on the panel. I believe we'll bring Doug in right now to provide his thoughts first. Doug, you talked about this a lot in our pre-show chat that we have. Just saying, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What did you think?
Well, I'm glad that the question that you raised is the one that you did, because to me, this is the question to ask about this. I tend to agree that, we don't want to get into some of the squishy stuff necessarily, but there are a lot of questions here. And my primary question is like yours: why did the mayor not take the first vaccine available to him? And why has he not been vaccinated under the pharmacy vaccination program already? I think these are reasonable questions to ask, and I think the mayor probably should clarify. Just looking at it from what we know right now, I think there are a couple of possibilities. One possibility is that the mayor is actually hesitant to get the vaccine and is reluctant to be vaccinated. I think that's one possibility. Another possibility is that he's vaccine shopping and would prefer to get one particular vaccine rather than another. There may be other explanations. There may be reasons that would make more sense. And I think the fact that he made a statement that is false to CTV, that there is some reason to wait until the age group that he is in is called in the city of Windsor. That's not true. That age group has been eligible to be vaccinated for over a week now. So I would love to hear Mayor Dilkens clarify the situation and explain his stance on vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, we can't get into his headspace and try to, figure it out. I agree. It would be really nice to have some kind of clarity provided by him, because just having, it's such a gap between the 2 points, right? What the accurate age is and what he had said to CTV. Pat, let me bring you in here, get your opinion on this.
Well, I think what Doug said is right. I mean, there's only a few explanations of what they are, and certainly that he hasn't adequately explained why he's out there on social media saying what it is that public officials all over the nation and everywhere, and health experts. Let me just actually say health experts, because there might be difference of opinions of what public officials have been saying, but health experts for sure have been telling us to get the first available vaccine. And the fact is that the first available vaccine for the mayor was available before he crossed the border to go into Michigan and then return. And then the next available vaccine was available in Michigan when he was offered it. It's not clear from the story in terms of that the purpose of the visit, whether that was vaccine related. It seems to imply, based on the way that the story is written, that it was a by the way. Um, um, so we'll leave it for what it is. But if it was by the way, then the mayor was offered that vaccine and he didn't take it at that time. There are other explanations, but assuming the information that's been given by the mayor is true and that he hasn't been vaccinated, then we're left with that. I do want to point out, John, that you mentioned that, and I don't know if that's clarification, or you took that right from the story. Maybe you can clarify that the mayor said that he did not stay in any, did not enter any non-medical facility while there, but unless he slept in a medical facility, he must have entered, some other place because they stayed over. So, there's just a couple pieces that are, did not make a lot of sense. The $1,700 purchase. Again, we don't want to go after family. We're not talking about what people do, politicians' families, but obviously that was planned. So was that planned to coincide with a medical visit? Like that was somebody purchased and knew that they were picking up goods over in Michigan. So
Don, what's your perspective on all this?
See if I can unmute my mic here. Yeah, I mean, not too much on top of what everybody has said already. I think it's irresponsible that if he was offered the vaccine that he didn't take it. He's been very vocal. The mayor's been very vocal, along with many members in the community, and myself included. That we're desperate for vaccines here. I mean, that's the reality of it. We keep waiting for shipments, and we're hoping that the states will kick over a few million now that they're kind of cutting back on their vaccines. So it doesn't make any sense to me that he wouldn't take it if it was offered to him. If he's vaccine shopping, teach their own. I think you take the first one you get. Even getting it over there, it's just one more person that could get vaccinated here. So don't understand what the thought process was for saying he didn't take it unless he thought, I guess it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If he says he got it over there, he'll some people will say, well, he's just jumping the queue and taking advantage of the situation. That I believe his son has dual citizenship. I don't know if the mayor does, and would have been eligible to go over there. And to me, given the situation, just I don't care if you're queue jumping. If I could go to the States and get it and take my kid there, I'd do it in 5 seconds. Whatever the actual reason was they went over there, if it's a medical situation with his family, hey, it's none of our business. All I'll say is, I hope whoever went over there for whatever reason gets well soon, and I wish them all the best. As far as the shopping goes, I think it's the mayor's responsibility if he is going to go to Michigan or the United States and spend, 48 hours over there and get to bring back light on it. He should put out a press release telling everybody in Windsor, I'm going there. If you need anything, I'm bringing a truck. And the least he could do was, they're allowed 50 cigars after 48 hours. They could have brought 100 back, and I would have been nice to him for the whole year. But no, he screwed up again. So Yeah, you know, I don't, there's not a lot about this story that bothers. It's just the way it came out is it just sounds like, you know, it seems like when the mayor tries to cover his butt, it always sounds like BS a lot of times, even if he's not trying. So again, whatever, you know, I hope his son's okay. I hope everything went fine. If he had to go to the States for a medical procedure, I'm assuming it's serious. So I really do hope that everything works out. And even if he was just taking his kid, even if it wasn't serious and the whole purpose of the trip was, I'm going over there because my son's eligible to get vaccinated and I don't want to wait here, 100%, I would do it too. I mean, all of us except for John here has kids. And I believe, you know, you would do whatever you have to do to take care of your kids. So I mean, I would have done the same thing. So I'm not gonna, I don't begrudge him for really anything about the whole trip aside from not taking a vaccine when you had the opportunity to do it, which means one more person over here could have got it.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that piece, and then I have a couple other points. I agree with you, Don, that if he was offered a vaccine in the US, he should have taken it. Probably at any time, if you're eligible for a vaccine, it's not just for your own benefit, it's for the benefit of the entire community. You should go ahead and do it. But I understand the sensitivity towards, you know, the perceptions of queue jumping. We've seen a little bit of that happen in our community, and certainly there is, you know, some pile-on and eyebrows raised when public figures are vaccinated. So I get that, but the key difference to me is that his age group is already eligible for a vaccination in Ontario. So if he were to be vaccinated in the US, the only thing he's doing is increasing capacity in Canada. And I cannot imagine anyone being overly critical about that. And the other piece I wanted to bring up is I want to put this this incident in perspective. You know, we've had this is the third time when the mayor's personal conduct during the pandemic has come up and has been a subject of public conversation. That can't be very comfortable, but I want to just draw that through line between all of them. When the pandemic hit, the mayor was out of the country. Certainly his right to travel. There were no travel restrictions when he left, but it seems ill-advised to me, and it just seems like the conduct of a person who is not taking the pandemic totally seriously. Then fast forward to last fall, and we had a lot of fun with it, but I think it was a pretty serious issue. The mayor dining out and breaking the rules at Nico's. He says inadvertently, okay, but again, this is, you know, this is a situation where you're looking at a person who's in a position of leadership who's saying all the right things about the pandemic, but then every time we get a window into his conduct, it's something different. And now here we are in April, and we've got questions about the mayor's vaccination. So, you know, I think that there have been a lot of reviews of the mayor's conduct during the pandemic. I've seen lots of this stuff in media, and most of it has been positive. I have some policy issues with the choices that have been made, but even more, I think that there are some questions about how seriously Mayor Dilkens has actually taken this whole thing.
Yeah, if I can just kind of agree with you on that. I think it undermines the message of a person in his position for the whole time. Like you said, we had the Nico situation, now we have this situation, and I believe he was in Jordan when this whole pandemic broke out. You know, it's one thing to say the right things. I mean, he's made all the announcements for vaccinations about who can get them, when you can get them. And my question is, why hasn't he done it already? I mean, 40 and over was, and I don't know, I assume the mayor's over 40. I assume he's closer to my age, over 50. You know, I would assume he would have got it already. I don't know what the holdup is. People in his position, I'm sure, could have jumped us peasants a little bit and got it quicker. So yeah, to not get it here and then not get it there, it raises a lot of questions when he's constantly on social media saying everybody go out there and get it. It's very important that you get it, and even calling out the provincial government and the federal government that the vaccine supplies aren't enough and they need to up their game. And then he has the opportunity to do it, and he doesn't get it. It just doesn't make, you know, the messaging is contrary to each other.
I think there were a lot of reasons why people raised an eyebrow over this story, and it came out by, as John mentioned, Rich Garten from CTV, and I don't know whether this was offered, in advance, or whether Rich got some kind of information and followed up on that. It was a really interesting way that it was presented. I think the fact that the crossover on the way back was through Blue Water also raised, questions. Now, this is not, obviously, somebody has a right to make any choices for their family. Somebody has a right to be on vacation with their family. Someone has a right to choose which border crossing. But really, those of us that live in the area, it is kind of eyebrow raising to cross over at Blue Water. And certainly when you're the mayor of the city at the international border crossing, and in fact, put those toll money back into our corporate interest over here. But so I'll put it at that. I agree. Well, so I think he's 49 is what I heard. And I don't know when his birthday is. So in theory, if he's turning 50 this year, he would have been eligible for the vaccine even well before the 40s hit. So again, some question about that. Going to the issue of whether, he should have accepted it in Michigan, I have to agree with Doug. And I think that you're right. If it were optically to look at, he would have received a vaccine before he would have otherwise been eligible in this area. And it would have looked like queue jumping, then that might have been a different situation. But we didn't have that. For sure, no one should be queue jumping. And so I wouldn't have disagreed with him if he decided to decline at that point, because everybody should be waiting their turn. And I know there's a lot of mumblings about the pace and who and what. And the choices that have been made. But, fair is fair. We all know what has been available, and the best advice has been to take the first available one, not something that happened here. So yes.
Yeah, and I guess last point on this before we go on to the next topic here. One that was sent to me by a lot of people via social media in my private inbox there was, did it have to be the mayor who crossed over? Because we've effectively lost our mayor now for 14 days, which is, we're under a stay-at-home order right now, but the mayor is under quarantine right now. Did it have to be Mayor Dilkens who crossed over? Was there not another family member? I mean, that gets into a bit more of a picky situation, but losing our head of council, losing the mayor for that 14-day period. I understand that he says there's everything he can do at home by work from home. That's great, but you're still the mayor, and I'm sure that there are situations where the mayor might need to physically be present somewhere, even if during
and
COVID.
so that's interesting because there was also pushback on that that type of commentary on social media, John. But and I think it was John that asked, I don't know if he's a dual citizen. It does not sound like he's has dual citizenship, because in the write-up in the newspaper, I think it was, he refers to having a lot of documentation that he had to produce on this side of the border, I think is what he said. And we may want to find that, not on the other side. And so that does not indicate that he would have had dual citizenship. I am not someone who knows a lot about immigration law. So if there's anybody out there listening to us, they may want to let us know through social media or other channels. But my understanding is that when someone is a minor and is a dual citizen in these circumstances, then that is something that is permissible, that the person who cares for them can also enter for the purpose of taking the minor over. So again, there were quite a few pieces that didn't seem to indicate. Certainly, dual citizenship for a child would indicate that someone else is a citizen. And so in any event, if there was paperwork, that could have been avoided. But again, we fall into the trap of being told, to mind your own business when it comes to somebody's, family choices, et cetera. So here we are. I think that the other thing is, because there are privacy reasons when somebody mentions medical, I mean, Dawn went straight to, a procedure. There's no indication, nor do we want to go into that. I'm just saying that let's assume there was reason to take a dual citizen minor over the border. Look at the other pieces, the staying overnight, the blue water entrance, the bringing back goods, the not getting the vaccination before going into the US, not taking the vaccination that was provided there. And yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
questions. Don't
Yeah, just one more point. John, I think I want to push back a little bit on the the quarantine is a problem for the city. We're a year into this thing. I assume that there's not going to be any circumstances where, like, they need the mayor because he's the only one with a key to some particular thing. Like,
I agree.
I feel like
Wasn't
it's
suggesting that.
yeah, it's totally okay.
I need paper clips out of the storeroom. Where's the damn mayor?
Yeah,
for
he
crying
might
out
need
loud?
to
Did we
stop
not
in.
open? But did we not open up a pandemic response room at the very beginning of this, the whole coordinated effort? I mean, this is my point. Like, if there were a situation where it was, he can be zoomed in. Again, it was something that came from our readers.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
okay. Bad readers then. Bad
I
listeners.
agree. I have to say, I agree. I don't think there's anything that the mayor can't do from home at this time. So that's not my.
Maybe
Not
he
my
does. Maybe he opens up City Hall every day, guys. I don't know.
He's
We'll
got
ask.
He's got the big key ring on the chain attached to his belt loop. Is that what's going on?
Can't get to work. Doors are still locked. Well, let's ask this question to our next guest. Ward 3 councillor and member of the Windsor Police Service Board, Rino Bortolin. We're so happy to have you here today. How are things going, councillor?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll just jump right into this. Windsor Star's Trevor Wilhelm put this one out. Windsor Police Service releases line by line budget details for first time. This came out on the 23rd. Windsor Police, for the first time, has released a more transparent budget breakdown, giving more insight into their spending at roughly $112 million this year. Ward 3 councillor Rino Bortolin, tonight's guest and member of the Windsor Police Service Board, said to the Star that residents should know how the police spend our tax dollars for reasons amounting to both trust and fiscal responsibility. This year, Windsor's contribution to the police budget is $94.2 million, or roughly a quarter, 25% of the city's overall budget. In the past, the department's annual spending only appeared publicly with little detail as line items in the city budget. This breakdown, available in the Windsor Police Board agenda, shows an approved net budget of $94.2 million with total actual expenditures of $111.5 million. $17.3 million in revenues, including nearly $6.9 million in grants from other levels of government, and $1.8 million for policing services related to the casino. The 2021 police budget increased by $1.7 million over last year, with additional funds to hire 3 IT specialists to help with data-based crime prevention and improving operational and strategic planning. Some of the new money will go towards improving diversity, wellness of members, and implementing recommendations of the Ontario Civilian Police Commission. Salaries and benefits, costing $98.7 million, take up 88% of expenditures. The police budget lists $67.3 million in base salaries, $1.7 million in overtime, among many other expenses, including uniforms, training, workers' comp. According to a 2020 annual report, the Windsor Police Service has 501 sworn officers, 150 civilian members, and 5 cadets. Councillor Bortolin, member of the Windsor Police Service Board, says such details like this help foster debate about how resources are allocated. The second largest expense is $5.2 million for purchased services, including $20,000 for fleet car washes, $87,000 for prisoner custody, $103,000 for office supplies, $209,000 for cell phones, and $289,000 for travel. Most police services in Ontario have already provided detailed budget breakdowns, and Windsor has been one of the last to do so because no one on council or the police board previously requested it. before our guest tonight. So, councillor, member of the Windsor Police Service Board, thank you for joining us. We've spoken about this issue before. A year ago, we spoke about this in the before times. I think one of our last shows, we talked about transparency and bringing it about, what it would look like. But for those who have missed our prior conversation or might be new to why this is, such a break from tradition here locally. Why is it important from your perspective that residents know how these tax dollars are being spent?
Well, the police services budget is the single biggest line in our total municipal budget overall. When we're looking at a $400+ million budget, and over 90 goes directly to police services, we are basically looking at 25% of your tax dollars goes to pay the police service. When we received our budget in years past, and this was a comment, and I learned this early on in my first term, that we as a council had no jurisdiction over how the police money is spent, but we also received, basically what was a one-pager. And what was interesting to me in the discussion that I had with other councillors this past year is that our art site, who we fund for $10,000, had a submission of, I think, 25, 30 pages or more. And the police budget submission was 2.5 pages and 1 page of actual financials. So this is public money. I mean, it doesn't matter what agency, where we're allocating the dollars. I believe that if it's public money, it should be made public, and it should be made accessible to the public that pays for those services. So, and to be quite honest, in the last year, we've seen a lot of discussion that brought up and people discussing the ideas of defunding police and things like that. When we have those discussions, we have to have them knowing all the facts and having the dollars and the budget breakdown in front of us. You realize that for us to make certain changes, we have to have discussions that actually mimic where the spending is going. So you'll see that almost 90% of the budget allocated is for staffing. So if we are going to talk about defunding police, that means that we're reducing the number of officers on the street, for example. So what this does is it just allows the community to see it, have their eyes on it, and then have an informed discussion about what it means to either change that model or reprioritize funding.
Now, you've brought up art site before. You brought it up at council as a pretty good reason as to why this type of insight is important. Again, for those who haven't seen that comparison that you made, could you briefly go into detail about it?
Well, we get formal submissions from our agencies, boards, and committees. They're called the ABCs at budget time, and we have a separate book that deals with that. So each one comes with their ask, and health unit, IRCA, Windsor Police. These are entities that are outside city departments, but that are funded by the city, or at least partially funded by the city. So they have to, give their budget submission. The art site submission is for a $10,000 ask, and that we funded perpetually for some time now. It had, like I said, dozens of pages of details. And the police budget for over $90 million had 3 pages or 2.5 pages. So I think it was very glaringly obvious that something needed to change there. And so, I made the request, and we moved along. We went through the process, and here we are. And we have a much more detailed budget, more alongside, as you mentioned, other municipalities in the province.
Did you get what was it like? Is it a scary thing to make that kind of request? Is it a shadowy group on the police services board going, don't you dare ask these questions, you're going to change everything?
No, it was actually, it's interesting because, when you're in an organization, something like Windsor Police, I'm the elected official. So for me, I'm used to, having to answer to the general public, to our residents. Windsor Police has been putting out their budget submission like this for years. Nobody has asked for anything different. Why do anything but the status quo? And so When I asked, they were very receptive. The chief was very receptive. They basically had to take back the budget that was presented to us and vet it and sort of, make sure there wasn't any information that they didn't want out there. But there wasn't really much of a pushback. In fact, it passed unanimously. It took some time. I was originally hoping that this budget would go to council at our budget deliberations. That didn't happen, but going forward, this is the new standard that we're using going forward.
It's great. It's great that we're using this standard moving forward. I remember a lot of the justifications that were brought up in the past as to why it couldn't be done. Operational security, can't let people know necessarily how many people are on the ground at any given time. It's just amazing that all that, I guess, amounted to BS, because a lot of this, it's all there. It's public now. It's good to see it. Just with this question, I'll let you respond though to that thought too. We're the last one, as you said, to do this. What does that say about Windsor? I guess, what does it say moving forward?
Well, it's, I don't know if we're the last. We're definitely slow to the party. What it means is that this is, a new approach at the Windsor Police Services Board. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to be on this board, was for issues like this, to bring more transparency, to shed more light on some of the things we're doing. Like I said, there wasn't pushback on this. The executive from Windsor Police did not have, anything that they wanted to hide or anything. It was just new to them. And so I'm actually really excited overall with respect to, I was part of the hiring process for the new chief and also for the new deputy chiefs. And I think the new executive sets the tone for the entire force. And I think with a new Windsor Police Services Board, a new executive, that this will lead to, new and improved approaches and progressive approaches. We're seeing it with, you saw naloxone finally being accepted and used across the force. You've seen it with the new MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding with Hotel Dieu Grace Hospital for mental health supports. These are all things that are coming and driven by the new executive. And so when you have the right people in place, there's a different culture in the force. And so with new members on the board and with new members in the executive, I'm hoping that this is now the new normal, so to speak.
Hey, thanks for that response there. Doug, let's bring you in and we'll get to the panel.
Sure thing. Rino, thanks for joining us and speaking to us about this. I wanted to ask you about a line I noticed in the Windsor Star report about the police budget. Some of the new money will go towards a number of different initiatives, including implementing recommendations of the Ontario Civilian Police Commission. So I wanted to clarify, is that budgetary expense related to the report that was released last year? And can you give us any details about what that looks like?
Yes, so those are directly in response to that. And in fact, we have a standing report at every board meeting now to go through the recommendations. I want to say 31 of them. Don't quote me on that. I know it was 30 plus recommendations. A few of the recommendations we have decided to basically hire outside help. So one of them was diversity and inclusion specialist to help devise diversity inclusion plan for the force. So we went external on some of these, and that's where you see some of those dollars allocated. They're specifically for those types of initiatives. I know the diversity one is the first one that needed external or new funding, I should say, not external funding, but new funding. And so, yeah, these are all in a direct response to the 30 plus recommendations that the OCPC made.
Nice to see you, Councillor. I have a couple questions for you. So we've been harassing you about this for years. I think we can well establish that. And the response you gave, and I don't know if it was just you or that, it was that nobody asked. Are we to believe that in all these years, people have been complaining about the police budget not being released to the city and citizens? The reason was because nobody asked before?
Yes. It's, well, I mean, I learned two things as well. So one, through the Police Services Act, is that the model or the way that the budget is presented is actually set by council, technically speaking. So we could have gone through council. Now that was not, that's not what I was led to believe in my first term. I was led to believe that, you know, what we got was from police and that they determined what information they gave us. But at the Police Services Board, we had a very robust discussion about this when I first asked. And it was interesting because it was, you know, the chief was, you know, sort of perplexed, is like, what did I want? And so I went in with examples from Ottawa and Toronto with the breakdown, and with also, you know, there was a report as part of the budget that had, you know, more pages like this with information explaining each of the breakdown. And basically the answer was, we've never done it that way. You know, we the last time we did a line by line review was when Ms. Chisholm was chair, which I believe was a while back, before this current mayor. So, you know, the issues that came forward were literally because the boards at the time did not ask for or make a motion to get a more in-depth review of the budget.
All right, fair enough. I had one other question. I was reviewing the PDF document that came out, and now this is more operational stuff, so I don't know if you have the answers to this or not. But in breaking down some of the statistics on use of force, they break down the use of force calls based off of race. Are most of the police departments in Ontario still using race as a qualifying factor in breaking down statistics?
Well, that's actually new. So the racial data is actually new because they had asked us to start doing that. So now police forces across the province have been asked to do that. So the issue of, and that's why we don't have a lot of deep data with respect to race, because we weren't collecting it previously, and we still can't ask them for it. These are, you'll notice the way it's written in the report is that this is the perceived race that the officer is making a judgment call at the time. So, so there are, you know, whether it's based on name or conversation or an issue, you know, when you have that interaction, but these are perceived race. But this was a new sort of edict from the province to basically try to track the use of force and the disproportionate use of force often felt by specific minority groups.
Oh yeah, because it seemed interesting because when I lived in Toronto back in the '90s, before the world was round, there was big pushback back then on keeping statistics based off of, you know, they called it racial profiling back then. I'm
Right.
sure they still do. So yeah, it seemed, no, it just seemed interesting to me that we were starting to do that now when there was such pushback 20 some odd years ago to not do that.
Right, and it's only used in very specific circumstances. So you only see it in the use of force statistics. You won't see it just for example, in our calls for service. You
Okay.
won't see that we have X amount of calls for service for Indigenous people or Black or other, you know, Southeast Asian or anything like that. It was a very specific approach to deal with the use of force specifically, because they felt that the use of force specifically was being disproportionately felt by certain groups.
All right, thanks.
Councillor, one other thing I wanted to ask about, it's been a few months now that the police service has been widely deploying naloxone. Were you given any information about that at the recent board meeting, and can you share it with us?
Yeah, so the board package now includes a naloxone deployment report, and I believe it's going to be quarterly. So this one was for January through March of this year. It had 4 instances where naloxone was deployed, 3 single doses, and 1 where they actually had to administer 3 doses to the individual. So the overall use of naloxone when police were involved was 195 instances, but that's total. That includes, you know, when they show up in EMS or fire, or you show up on a scene, if for example in a shelter, and say one of the staff of the shelter have deployed it. So 195 instances total, but 4 where police were actually the first ones on the scene and deployed it because they were the first responders in those cases. So I think this was important. We've heard over and over and over for about a year or two now that we didn't need it. This is 4 times, one where we had to administer 3 doses to revive the person. I think that argument is settled. I think we need naloxone. I think this is proof that, the first 3 months where we're using it, we've already seen 4 instances where we've needed it. And to be honest, hopefully we can move on from this and start having other conversations as if, where and what do these statistics mean in the bigger picture? How are we sharing these statistics with other agencies so that we can actually reduce the number of overdoses and start dealing with the actual root causes of it? Because to be honest, I'm sick of having this discussion, and I'm sick of having to deal with the excuses and the sort of the conversation that comes from it. But, I think unequivocally 4 times in 3 months shows that the need was there.
I was just waiting for my age group to be called. Counselor and RCP alumnus, welcome. I just want to ask, you were talking about data, you were talking about financial statements, the issue of not having had those questions before. In your view now, you've been on the police board for a couple of years. Is there any other information from your view where data can still be made available to make the police board more transparent, more accountable, whether it's to the public or to city council?
I think so. I mean, in general, we get a lot of reports at the board level. We get a lot of reports monthly and then also yearly. I think one of the questions that I pushed on when the yearly reports came back was what do we do? So for example, the use of force report that came out for the first quarter. So now we're getting quarterly reports on the use of force and comparison. So we compared 2020 to 2021 for the use of force. When there are major changes or large discrepancies, how do we analyze that data? We have a lot of data that consists of beyond just regular calls for service for police that includes social issues and other things. How are we using that data to actually try to be proactive in addressing the social issues? That isn't happening now. And we're not proactively going outside the realm of Windsor Police and being called for calls for service and crime. And we're not actually actively sharing that data to use. We do so informally at roundtables and things like that. But I think we can be much more proactive to share a lot of that data. Windsor Police, unfortunately, is the catch-all for everything. So if it's crime, if it's social issues, if there's addiction, mental health issues, Windsor Police is also oftentimes the first that's called. So how and what can we glean from this? And where do we need some of the investments? Where do we need some of those things? Beyond that, I for me, the more information and the deeper we dive into any area where we can collect data and the more that we can share it, the better. And so the budget was the obvious one. I think any of these reports, I would love to see an analysis of our calls for service. What neighborhoods in what areas and how many of our calls for service are directed towards low-income areas, and how many issues of calls for service are tied to equity issues. And when we start determining that, we can start looking at the broader issues and the broader impacts of policies in the community that do have a very direct impact on our system. And then police are usually, because we're the catch-all, we have all those data and statistics. So it would be good to really parse all that out and allow a lot more analysis of the data that we do collect.
I wonder, like, if this is what like you've been pushing for and what it's taken for, this new board to start to get this type of information out. It's coming out now on a quarterly basis, whatever like the different forms of it may be. You're identifying so much more data that could be made available. I guess what has the role, I'm not trying to set you up to dig on your predecessors here, but what has the role traditionally been of members of the Windsor Police Services Board? What were the things that they were pushing for, or, conversely not pushing for? Why is it that there is such an opportunity here to go and make so much data available that hasn't been made available before?
Well, I mean, some of the data has been made available. We do have, our public meetings do have a lot of the data in it. We do have our yearly reports. It's stagnant data, and Doug will appreciate this. It's not used in an open format. We can't cross-reference it with other things. It's sort of it's the PDF version of data release, right? So more can be done on that end. Police services boards have very much been, governance. It's, the Police Services Act is very different than, say, being on city council or other types of boards. It's the governance. It's making sure that that the chief and the executive are doing the job, and the chief is the only employee of the board. And so, I can't really comment on what the focus was on years past, but I do think that there's opportunities, and again, this is 25% of our budget, and not just that. Forget about the fact that this is one of our biggest costs. It's one of the biggest opportunities. The issues plaguing our community right now are very much tied to a lot of the social issues. Those social issues are being left to Windsor Police to deal with. And we talked about this last year, John, when we talked about the whole defund idea police. And the fact of the matter is, if we defunded police today, Windsor would be a lot worse of a community, because nobody would be responding to the mental health issues and the addiction issues in the community. Until we overinvest in those areas, you're not going to see an opportunity to defund police or change funding priorities. But how can we use the data to set ourselves up for better investments in things like addiction services or mental health services? Because the data that's there is coming from Windsor Police. And in fact, I would have liked to see, even for the use of force analysis. I know you guys did a show on this a while back. And I think that there was some aspects to that conversation that we're missing, because I think going beyond the racialized data, let's go into, where are these calls for service happening? These are not happening in affluent neighborhoods. These are happening in low income neighborhoods. And that's anecdotal, but this is a pattern. And these are conversations that I have, because I see police services in my ward, and I've been working directly with police on a lot of issues. So how can we actually start to claw that back and say, what's the impact of closing a community center and other municipal services in a low-income neighborhood? And what's the difference in crime data in those areas after those closures, right? It helps inform other investments. It helps inform other policies. We don't do enough of that. Police oftentimes stand on their own, and they don't like to wade in on issues. And when they do, sometimes you'll see that they'll get their knuckles wrapped because they don't want them to be political. And what we should be doing is we should be going completely the opposite way. And the police force, or at least the information gleaned from the police force, should be made hyper political, because it should be used to inform every decision that we make across the community, right? Whether it's speed limits, whether it's cameras, whether it's any of those issues, police are the ones dealing with this on a daily basis. Why are we not using their information? And so I think there's an opportunity there. And as far as previous boards, I think previous boards, I'll say it again too. This is a difficult job, and sitting on the police services board has probably doubled my workload as a city councillor. And my part-time job as a city councillor with my 13, 14 boards and committees makes it harder to dive in with both feet. I wanted this position. I'm not complaining, but it is very grueling on a lot of councillors to be able to sit on this many committees and have that good and that impact that you really want to see.
The fact that it's a lot more work for you, are you insinuating that the other councillors are overpaid?
Are you still trying to apply, Don?
I'm still, no one's taking me. I need a paycheck.
Well, councillor, board member of the Windsor Police Services Board, thanks so much for joining us for this conversation. We're going to get you to stick with us just for another 10 minutes. I know you're busy and you've got another, board meeting that you have to get to right now. But we launched a new segment last week. It's called For Your Consideration. We have appropriated a segment from Canada Land. This is now the final time that we will ever reference where it came from moving forward. It's our segment. That's how it works. So, Councillor,
Duly noted.
their duly noted segment, exactly. Councillor, we're going to ask you right now while we go through these. I want to know something that's on your mind about the city. You'll see what the format is as we go through it. Just, it could be what grinds your gears. It could be a shout out that you want to give, but we'll start right now with Pat. Again, these are the stories that we don't have time to get to them all in the show. There's a lot to dive into. We want to get to the meat on it, but we're really left with just the meat on the bones. So, Pat, what's up?
I'll get us started, sure. And I know that we try to keep these to a minimum, but I'm going to just take a couple of minutes here. My for your consideration is a letter to the editor that appeared in the Windsor Star dated April 27th, so just a couple days ago. And the headline is "Medical Facilities Away from Downtown Core seems to be the best option." And it's a letter written from an Amherstburg resident. And if you don't mind, I'd like to, it's very, very short. It's not too long. I'm going to read it. And it's in reference to an opinion piece or a column by Ann Jarvis in the Windsor Star, which was titled "Want to Get a COVID-19 Vaccination Downtown? No, Thank You" by Ann Jarvis, March 25th. So in a little bit of fairness to this letter writer, 1 month previously, he's responding to this column. And he says, quote, "It was interesting to read that the Windsor Essex County Health Unit's online bookings filled up quickly at the WFCU Center and St. Clair College clinics located on the city's outskirts, but that the clinic in the city's core had appointment available every day, Thursday through Saturday, even with an overwhelming amount of people eagerly waiting to get vaccinated, and Windsor Regional Hospital's CEO, David Mouget, offering many incentives. Yet it still could not attract a full house downtown. Self-satisfaction came upon me due to the fact that I have always supported the location of the planned new hospital currently in the works just outside the city." Actually, that's wrong, but and to me, this is just one case in point where a large majority of people believe the city's core is not the best place for medical facilities. We are on the right track with the new hospital location. As they say, it's only 5 minutes away. I don't know who says it's only 5 minutes away. Ask anybody who needs to take a bus that still hasn't been planned. But there you have it, an Amherstburg resident. I'm going to actually ask Councillor Bortolin to comment, even though we don't do a lot of commentary on our For Your Consideration, because not only are you a member of the Police Services Board, but on the many boards that you've referred to, 13, 15, whatever it is, you're also a member of the Windsor Essex County Health Units Board. So you might be able to help us with this. I think most people who listen to our show know how passionate I am about this particular topic. And it's not Mr. Mayhew that I want to go after, although I have a couple of pieces to comment about his misinformation. And that's because I am going to go talk about the Windsor Star for a moment, and the fact that there hasn't been a follow-up to that March 25th column that came out right after the downtown location had been opened up. For those that follow, it was called Windsor Hall. Even now, people will not know where that is. So it was very quick after it had opened. Perhaps you can tell us what the numbers are. I'm going to provide a little story when the hotspot postal codes were announced. Dawn and I are both in, sorry, Dawn, I hope I'm not providing too much private personal information here, but Dawn and I are both in the hotspot postal codes and of similar age. And we were, when we became eligible, we both went onto the site in order to book our appointment. And Dawn, where did you end up going?
Ironically, I went to Amherstburg.
Yeah, because it was the first available appointment that he could take. I decided because of work commitments that I wanted to go to the downtown location. I believe we both looked it up on the same day. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the Thursday. And when did you get an appointment, Don?
Yeah, the only reason I went to Amherstburg is because I could get in on Saturday. I could have booked downtown. I believe it was at the earliest was Monday or Tuesday.
I got my appointment Tuesday afternoon. So, so based on our experiences who actually live in the core, Amherstburg was freed up, had the first available appointment. So what I'm trying to say is those of us that have been around here know that that story is not accurate. And certainly if there was any question about it on March 25th, there is no further question about how full that downtown, and by the way, very efficiently run clinic is for the vaccine. So my criticism is more towards the Windsor Star, that not only did they not update that piece to provide news and information to the community that is more accurate, but they went ahead and then published a letter to the editor full of inaccuracies as a result. I don't know, I'll throw it out to anyone, but since the councillor's here, you might want to comment on that as well.
I'm going
That's for your consideration.
I'm going to carefully give a tempered comment because what I want to say would not be okay from a lot of reasons. I will say this much. The original story was misleading and just a lot of conjecture, a lot of hearsay. I am working with WETU to actually start reporting on number of vaccines at the different locations so that we can actually show what those are. In my conversations with WETU leadership, that center had been full after some of the confusion of not knowing where Windsor Hall is not at the Fogelar land, as many people would look up and they would have no idea what it was. So once they understood that, that's actually available, it leveled out and it was just as full as every other one. So I think, you already touched upon the fact that they would print such a garbage letter. I think what's interesting here, though, and something to pull out from this is that what you actually have here, though, is a byproduct of the entire conversation and the entire way that our leadership in this community has portrayed the hospital situation and location and the debate about the location. I forget exactly what he said, feel vindicated that we chose the right spot and those types of things. This is it's sad. It's unfortunate and it's sad. I mean, the fact that, a real conversation, whichever side you are on the issue, can't be had, and that somebody would write a letter like this gleefully explaining that, look at how downtown is. I mean, I could give you 30 reasons to shit on Amherstburg if I wanted to. I'm not going to, because there's no reason to, right? And so the whole idea is that you've now created an us versus them, and that's the unfortunate part. Last comment about this one, the notion that these are the last places that we should be putting healthcare services in, the hotspots, all the postal codes, where are they? I mean, come on, people. The hotspots and the locations of the hotspots, that should tell you a lot of where healthcare services should be in our community. And they shouldn't be a $40, $50 cab ride away from those hotspots. So, I mean, I'll stop there, but, it's unfortunate. And then Windsor Star continuing to print the garbage and those types of letters. It's too bad.
Many of us would argue that the us versus them mentality actually was planned and a strategic, or at least a tactical ploy by those that wanted to see that location. So a little bit of fairness to the letter writer whose vote you apparently don't need anyway. I do want to just follow up in just saying this, and perhaps we can talk about this the next time you're on the show to talk about the Police Services Board. So I want to marry these two topics. You mentioned, the budget and costs, etc. And I don't know that it has been done because we are quite a bit of ways, but knowing now that we have phase 2 funding and the planning that's going to be centered around that hospital plan, not necessarily locations, etc., but that hospital plan, I'd like to ask you on behalf of the community to ensure that the Police Services Board at some point starts planning to talk about increased costs, or at least the impact on police service budget in the future, if indeed the hospital is located on County Road 42, and what that will look like for police service budget. Duly
Definitely
noted.
makes sense.
Yeah, and if I can just add, if you want to, I'll try and help people come to Windsor and get their vaccination. My ex just got hers the other day, and she got two Harvey's apple pies after getting her vaccination. I went to Amherstburg. I got Jack. I got nothing from those guys out there at all. So
I
if you're
got
getting,
chocolate downtown.
see, 100, I'm getting screwed. So screw those Amherstburg people.
I didn't even get
Yeah.
a Band-Aid.
No, you had to bring your
No,
own Band-Aid.
I
Was
had
that
to
bad,
hold
John?
gauze until it
Was
ended.
it?
As a member of the BIA board, I'd like to promote downtown businesses and want to indicate that Greentown is just a few steps from the Vax Clinic, and highly recommend.
We can help you with all of your vax woes post-vax. Councillor, do you have anything that you want us to consider before I let you and Pat get to your board meeting?
Too
Have
many
you-
things. So
have you been vaccinated, Councillor?
I have, and
Do
I'm
you want to
glad
comment?
get it over with.
Do you want to comment on the mayor not getting his wives over there? You know, I love to make your life difficult.
Well, I mean, I saw some interesting posts. I think that if it was made available to him, I think he should have taken it, because I think it just opens up a vaccine for someone else in the community. And yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, because I think the other aspect is that, just like everyone else, and we saw the Prime Minister do his photo op last week, I believe, at the pharmacy. As far as I know, the mayor's older than me, so he's definitely available for the vaccine. We'd like to see that he definitely promotes it, and he hasn't shied away from using videos and promotion. So, I hope that when he does get the vaccine, that he promotes it widely using his videos, especially if it's at a pharmacy with AstraZeneca, to make sure that we are, promoting the use of it and the safety of it. So, I think he will. I think that this is one of the types of things that's a natural for him. He's used videos to do it often. So, I hope that we'll see a video out soon of him getting the prick.
Is it is it possible he's just trying to write a poem about it and he can't find a word to rhyme with AstraZeneca?
Well, I think there's plenty of people writing poems nowadays, so I'm not sure he could probably put that aside for now. So, but yeah, well, he's found the words to rhyme with a lot of other things, so I think he could probably find something for AstraZeneca.
It's a really hard one to come up with on the spot, though. I'm trying really hard and I can't think of anything. I'd like for all of you to consider Windsor Vax Finders, and I guess also, the Vaccine Finders Canada. Great that there are these people who are stepping up and doing something that, quite frankly, isn't being provided or isn't being adequately provided by various levels of government, wherever it be. I think the fact that one is popping up here in Windsor that's being run independently by Windsorites is something that needs to be commended. But I think it also reveals a lot of really concerning things about this. We saw an official partnership between the City of Toronto and the Vaccine Finders Canada today. It was revealed that they wouldn't be paid for their services either. So it's a lot of free labor going on here for something that is it is a government service that should be provided. And it blows me away because, as one does repeatedly throughout this pandemic, I watched Contagion again recently, and they straight up had a vaccine lottery in that movie, which seems like it's a better system than what we're dealing with right now. I criticize the Ontario government for a cannabis lottery, but a vaccine lottery seems like a pretty adequate and equitable way to go about this. But also, what really upset me about watching the movie last night is that it was a nasal vaccine in Contagion. What the hell? The needles are, I don't like needles. Anyways, that's my for your consideration. It's great that it's being done, but shame on all levels of government that it's having to be picked up by individuals.
I'm
I
sorry
thi-
to be missing the remainder of the for your considerations, but on to another meeting. Have a good rest of the show, guys.
Bye, Pat.
on John's comments there, I think we're going more with the Maze Runner style, where it's
It's good. It's Hunger Games style right now.
Hunger Games,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Actually,
Well-
a question for Reno. Reno, I don't know if you can answer this, so it may not be a fair question. I do know that the Windsor Health unit does have the numbers for every dose of vaccine, where it's at. Why wouldn't they put that information out publicly so that people can, conduct themselves accordingly and go where it is? Do you have any idea on that?
What do you mean by the numbers with the doses?
Well, so I have a friend at the health unit, and they say that they know exactly how many doses is at each pharmacy, is at each thing. But according to what John just had mentioned with the VaxFinder people, they don't seem to have access to that data. Why wouldn't they give that information out so we know where the vaccine, there might be excess at, a Windsor pharmacy, for instance?
Well, some of it is just sort of the jurisdiction, basically, is kind of what it comes down to, unfortunately. I mean, jurisdiction and resources. So everything that's controlled by WetU or even tied to WetU, they put out, and you'll see that you can book on their website, and it's been great. Everything at the pharmacies is run by a different program, so it doesn't go through WetU, but they're reported to WetU. So we will get the reports, and we will know that,
How many doses they have left, that kind of
shoppers
stuff.
here. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that they're using them properly. So we basically, what we want to ensure, WetU wants to ensure, is that they're getting into arms. Where, who, what hours they're open, and things like that. That's not our jurisdiction in that case. I will say this much, and to John's point about the vaccines, we've been seeing reports from all across the province. There was, lineups in huge lineups in parking lots that where half the people were not serviced. I have to say, and I'm going to say this proudly as a member of WetU board, but also after a lot of early on conversation and innuendo and anonymous sources, tainting the public stories and perception out there. Our rollout of the vaccine has been phenomenal. And all of us have been to a center where the level of service has been fantastic. The efficiency of the experience has been fantastic. We are at this point pacing to, by the middle of May, crest over the 50% mark for Windsor Essex. That's far and away ahead of the provincial average and ahead of the national average. And at this point, we're looking that by the end of the summer, locally, we will probably be surpassing the United States for their percentage of population as far as vaccination rates. So what we're seeing here locally needs to be commended and needs to be mentioned. I mean, we're doing it ethically, as we mentioned, it's not a lottery, and it's happening. And as soon as there's available shots, our medical officer of health has not hesitated. When the province went 45, he went 40 the other day. We've led the province on a lot of that. We're getting a bigger supply for the first 2 weeks of May. These are all good news for our region. And the fact that we will be surpassing over 50% by the middle of May and potentially into the 60s by the beginning of June, that's a great story. And that's a great thing for the herd immunity issue that we want to see across the community. So that's the shout out I want to have, because I think it deserves it, especially after a lot of the negativity, early on, before, the vaccine started showing up.
Yeah, not that you need my extra, but I think the health unit's done a great job. I think the booking system online has been probably one of the more efficient ones if you listen to all the stories. So yeah, I agree with that. I think they're doing a fantastic job rolling this out.
Yeah.
While we've still got you here, what was up, like, from your perspective with all of those anonymous sources? I mean, there were some really fast FOIAs that we saw rolled out at the very beginning of the pandemic that created a narrative. It seemed like there was a concerted effort to sort of kneecap the health unit by forces at B. What's your take as someone who serves on that board and who deals with that?
I think it was a power issue. I think people in the community are used to being in charge, and the medical officer of health and the health unit being the unlikely leader of this sort of initiative. before COVID, nobody could name our medical officer of health. Nobody can name WetU's CEO. But in a fantastic way, they've done a great job, and they've put politics aside, and they've put everything aside, and they've been able to actually do things properly, efficiently. Are there stumbles along the way? Absolutely. But the issues that you saw was, for me, it was games of power and a tug of war of who wanted to be in charge. And when they weren't, they would rather cast a bad light on those that are doing a good job rather than, rolling up their arms or sleeves and getting to work to help. Right. So I think it was probably a lot more complicated than that. But to me, it was a power issue and a power game.
Hey, well, thanks for sharing that insight there. Much appreciated. Now, Doug, we'll wrap it up with you and put this show to bed.
Okay, so you guys might have noticed that the Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation was excitedly signaling that they were rebranding. Today is the day. So, of course, I eagerly ran to my computer, put my hands on the keyboard, and checked out the new website. You can too, investwindsoressex.com. Poking around the site, again, as you do, I scrolled to the bottom and I noted the name of the company who designed the website, eSolutions Group. I've never heard of them. Not a name I'm familiar with. So I looked into it. eSolutions Group is a company based in Tampa, Florida and Waterloo, Ontario. So what I'm curious about is why this seemingly bog standard website from a template was not built in Windsor. To that end, I reached out to the Economic Development Corporation and I asked them 3 questions. I asked them if there was an RFQ process for this website. If there wasn't, I then asked which local companies they approached to get a price. And then I asked how much this thing cost, because I'm really curious about what the cost was for, again, what I think is a pretty standard website. To this point, they haven't gotten back to me, but I am really curious why the organization that is dedicated to promoting investment in Windsor Essex chose not to invest in Windsor Essex for their new website, for your consideration.
It's not even like it's, the Economic Development Corporation anymore. Literally called Invest Windsor Essex.
Asterisk, unless it's a website.
Well, thank you for that. Councillor, anything you want to respond to on that note?
Well, no, I would agree. If you're going to invest in Windsor Essex, start with your own.
It is interesting that part of the thing on the website is they talk about investing in Windsor. One of the benefits is the cost associated with hiring people down here, and then they go out of town and hire other people.
Leaves a lot of questions in the head.
I just report the news, John. I don't make it up.
So to be fair, Weedsy hasn't responded. Invest Windsor Essex has not responded. But we didn't give them a whole lot of time. It's only a few hours ago that I asked the question. So maybe we'll talk about this next week. And they are crafting a thoughtful response as we speak.
To be fair, though, we are still waiting for our last request that we put in over a month ago. So, maybe
they're
we'll
waiting
both back.
Yeah, maybe they're waiting to package it all up.
Since I have the councillor here, can I talk to you about the park behind my house, Reno? Because this is see his eyes glaze over. You mentioned that damn park one more time.
My favorite RCP panelist. You can call me off the air.
Okay.
See, Reno likes this though because we're keeping him from the board meeting. So this is
100%.
good. They can't even start without him.
You can call me off the air and I won't respond.
Well, that's just for Don though, right?
Yes.
Other constituents you can still reach them. Well, Councillor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really, it's been a treat. It's always great to have a chat with you offline, but to be able to have a conversation, like this in an open forum and talking about something, quite frankly, a good news story on a couple fronts there. More data being made available from the city. Thanks for that push. And then also, I like how you left your consideration there on the good note with the health unit. Lots to be celebrated. And if Windsor Essex is going to be on the front end of coming out of this, I think that's awesome. Lord knows that we've got the best weather in the country. So it would be great to be able to make the most out of this summer. And I would imagine that you all agree with me on that point. So for those of you listening along, thank you so much for making it through the show with us. We really appreciate it. Our guest tonight, as you have heard, was Windsor Police Service Board member and Ward 3 City Councillor Rino Bortolin. If you are a Patreon subscriber, thank you so much. If you're not, head over to patreon.com/Rose City Politics. We are in BizX monthly and on BizX online at all times, bizxmagazine.com. Like, follow, and share us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We're on all of your favorite podcasting apps as well. And as always, we broadcast live on tape. And we are brought to you with the kind support of LIUNA 625, Building Better Communities. This is Rose City Politics for April 28th, and we will see you next month in May, where hopefully we are going to be at a much better vaccination rate, according to Rino Bortolin. Thank you so much, everyone. All the best.